Welcome to another edition of E.W. Jackson for America. Great to be with you again today. Hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Of course, it's the first time live back with you yesterday. You got a best of yesterday. We didn't live stream my Sunday service because of a mistake that I made. I take full responsibility for that. But we do have that sermon on tape, and we're going to air it probably sometime. Well, I'm not sure when, but we'll make it available to you. That was the first sermon of the brand new year. I think it's an important one. I do that every year. I focus on sort of looking ahead to the year, and our theme this year for our ministry is 2024, the year of more. 2024, the year of more. And we're just believing God to increase us more and more, because that's exactly what the Lord wants to do for us. So I want to make sure that you have access to that message. And let's see, I'm going to have that available to you probably by Friday. I'm just not sure when we're going to have it. The theme is taken from Psalm 115:14. May the Lord give you increase more and more, you and your children. May you be blessed by the Lord who made heaven and earth. Psalm 115:14 and 15. All right, well, look, I've only got two stories I want to cover with you today. One we're going to spend some time on, which is Biden's speech, and the other is this Lloyd Austin absence without leave, as we used to call it in the military. His being in absentia, being sick, being in the ICU, and nobody, including the President of the United States and the National Security Director, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, apparently nobody knew that he was out of pocket. And I want to get into that. I think that's an extremely important issue that we need to discuss. So here's number one. I want to get these housekeeping matters out of the way since we've had a weekend go by. Remember, January the 27th, Saturday, January 27th at 6 p.m., Andrew Womack will be in the Hampton Roads area at the Chesapeake Conference Center. We've already got 400 people registered. 400 people registered, and we're still almost 3 weeks out. We are prepared for up to 1,200, and if we exceed that number, which it's starting to feel like we're going to do, then we'll have to expand the space. That's why we're asking you to register. Register very easily. Go to standamerica.us, and you can register there. There's no cost for tickets. We're not charging anybody to come, but we just want to know how many people are coming. So our registration is up to 400 already, and that's with 3 weeks left to go, at least 3 weeks from Saturday. So really now about two weeks and 4 days, I guess. So plenty of time to get registered and to make sure that we have the space to accommodate people. Now, I seem to be emphasizing this. Maybe you think, well, what's the big deal? You're not charging people. But there's going to be a fire marshal there. We have got to make sure that we are not beyond capacity, because if we are, he is either going to make us turn people away or close the situation down. So I'm very serious about this. We need to know who's coming so that we can make sure that we are in compliance with the fire code, and that we have enough space to accommodate everybody who comes. Okay, so that's the reason why we're making sure that we get people registered, rather than just throwing out the net and whosoever will, let him come. We want everybody to come. We just want to make sure that we can accommodate everybody who does come, because if we can't, we can have a problem with the fire marshal. So that's all I'm asking. Cooperate with us in that sense, and that way when you get there, you won't find yourself, if you happen to get caught in traffic, you happen to arrive late or whatever, you won't find yourself in a situation where the fire marshal's out there saying, sorry, you can't come in. Because they're out of seats and there was no accommodation made for more people than they, than were registered, or more people than whatever, than the 1,000, initially 1,000 up to 1,200 that we're planning to expand to accommodate. Okay. Now, in less than a week, and this is an even higher priority because the Andrew Womack event is almost 3 weeks away, but the Martin Luther King event is now, what's this, Tuesday, 6 days away. We have already given our count. We can accommodate more, but we need to know now if you are coming. So you need to go to the website, thecalled.org, thecalled.org, and you need to buy your tickets now, okay? You need to buy your tickets now because we have run into problems before where we have people showing up at the door that didn't register, and we're trying to accommodate those people, and believe it or not, that costs us because those last-minute additions, the hotel charges you a premium for those meals, and that creates a problem for us and for the event. So go and get your tickets now, thecall.org. You can sign up there and buy your ticket. Now, here's the other thing. If you're not a person, well, if you're watching me on the internet, you probably are a person who, navigates the internet without any problem. But just in case, it may be, I was talking to somebody today who's got a Facebook page, but they don't really know much about going beyond that. So in case you say, well, I don't know about buying these tickets online, call us, 757-485-7777. That's 757-485-7777. Now, for those of you who didn't catch that, but you want to write that down, you don't have a pen or pencil nearby, I'm going to pause here for a couple seconds to give you an opportunity to go get a pen, get a pencil, and get a piece of paper or something that you're going to write this down with, okay? Are you ready? Very easy number to remember anyway. But just for those who might, be a little challenged with numbers and say, oh yeah, I remember it now, but 5 minutes from now I might not. 757, which is the area code here. That's very simple. 485. Those are really the only three numbers you got to remember because the last four are just the same number repeated 4 times. 757-485-7777. That's 757-485-7777. Okay? Got those things out of the way. Let's get to the stories that I want to talk to you about. I'm going to come to well, you know what? Actually, no, let me get this Lloyd Austin situation out of the way first. One of the themes that I hit again and again and again and again and again is this. The left, particularly the Democrat Party, and by the way, this is true of some Republicans too. I don't want to pretend all the Republicans are saints and all the Democrats are demons. No, pretty much all the Democrats are demons, and a whole lot of Republicans are demons too. But thank God there's some born-again, spirit-filled believers in the Republican Party, and that's where my hope for the Republican Party comes from, what little I have for it, frankly, because it is not particularly friendly to those people. In fact, it tends to be hostile to those people. The establishment does. But leaving that aside for the moment, one of the themes I've hit again and again is that these people don't care about you and me. They don't. Meaning they don't care about the American citizen. They're not interested in serving us. They don't care what happens to us. They don't care what we are going through. They don't care how the policies that they implement affect us. That's not their concern. Their concern is themselves and their agenda. They are, I've said many times, I would never, if I were president of the United States or a governor, I would never appoint a homosexual activist as a judge. And the reason is that their agenda is not the Constitution or the law. Their agenda is homosexuality. What they're interested in is promoting that. And therefore, they're not going to be fair or impartial. They've got an agenda. When Virginia's constitutional amendment defining marriage as a union between one man and one woman was struck down, the judge openly said that she, who happened to be a woman, could not wait for that case to come before her so she could strike down the constitutional amendment that defined marriage as a union between one man and one woman. That was her agenda, not fair and impartial judging. It was pursuing this radical sexual perversion agenda that they have. Well, look, the whole Democrat Party is infected with that and a whole lot of other stuff as well. It is a godless party for the most part. I mean, it really doesn't have, sadly, the black Christians in the Democrat Party don't provide any salt or light to it. That's a sad statement, but it's true. The black Democrats who are Christians in the Democrat Party, and I'm sure that there are Christians in the Democrat Party from other communities as well, but they don't provide any salt and light. They don't stand up against the godless policies and principles of the Democrat Party. They go along with them. I mean, Mother Emanuel AME Church down in Charleston, where that terrible mass murder happened, and that kid walked in there and killed all of those folks. They had Biden there. In fact, the day that happened, the pastor had just left a meeting with Hillary Clinton. Now, these people support killing unborn babies en masse. They support gender confusion, which is in direct defiance of God's word. They are racial demagogues. I'm going to get into that in the second part of this. And they just had Biden at their church. You see them standing up, giving him an ovation. I mean, this man is evil. He's wicked. And I'm sure they say, well, Donald Trump is too. Well, that's another debate. Whether Donald Trump is or is not, when I don't believe that he is, by the way, but whether he is or is not is a separate debate. Joe Biden is. Clearly. His family is corrupt. He has sold us out to communist China and to other nations, using his son as a surrogate to collect cash for the Biden family. I mean, come on, it's obvious, folks. Please. So that hasn't been proved in a court of law. Well, you know what? There are courts of law, and then there's human reason. The evidentiary requirements for putting somebody in prison or convicting somebody of a crime are different than the observations of a human being that tell them what the truth is. The standard for putting somebody in jail or convicting somebody of crime are different than what you and I as human beings can observe and conclude that we can know to be true. Now, you and I know that Hunter Biden has not been out there on his own making tens of millions of dollars because he's just a brilliant consultant or whatever. And you and I know the other members of the Biden family who've been collecting big checks have not been collecting big checks because they have some great font of wisdom and insight to offer these countries and companies that they've been involved with. We know what's going on. I mean, come on. Americans have common sense. We know they're engaged in influence peddling. And we know that they're selling the country out so they can make money. We know that. And you see it reflected in Biden's behavior. Biden is not aggressive about trying to clean the country up from Chinese influence. He's not aggressive about that at all. We don't want to decouple from China. Well, of course not, because you'd be decoupling from all that money that they're giving you. Probably more. He'll probably make more when he's no longer president. Probably unleash Hunter, man. Go for it now. They can't say a thing. These people are not out for you and me. They're not concerned about our well-being. They're not concerned about the fate of our nation in the sense that they want us to be a nation that provides the greatest benefit to the greatest number of people possible to allow every American to be fulfilled or to have the opportunity to be fulfilled. They're not interested in that. They're only interested in their own personal power and wealth and their agenda. And their agenda is an agenda of power. So the things that lend themselves to enhancing power for themselves, they do. And the things that don't, they don't care about. Now, this brings me again to this Austin thing. He said, well, what does all that have to do with this? If you are truly a person, you're Secretary of Defense, right? And you truly care about the defense of our country, you truly care about what happens to the United States of America and its people, and you know that you're going under the knife or you're going into an intense medical treatment situation because you care about the country. You don't care that the whole world knows if that's what it takes. You want the president to know, Mr. President, I will be out of pocket for a week. You want the National Security Advisor to know, I will be out of pocket for a week. You want the Homeland Security, Secretary of Homeland Security to know, I will be out of pocket for a week. You want the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to know, I'll be out of pocket for a week. He didn't tell anybody. They say, well, why would you do that? Particularly knowing that we've got a war raging in the Middle East, knowing that we've unleashed all kinds of potential terrorists and enemy combatants into our country through our southern border. Of course, he doesn't care about that either, because, again, what happens to the American people just doesn't matter. But knowing that, God forbid, if something were to happen, and the president would have to order the use of force, that order goes through the Secretary of Defense, you are not there. And you know, there have been a number of engagements in Israel that have involved American military forces, and people have been asking the question, well, who's been giving the orders? Who's been okaying these actions? We don't really know. We don't have an answer. I mean, and the fact of the matter is they hid from the proper authorities that this man was out of pocket. They hid it. And he comes up with, yeah, I didn't do the best job. I'll have to do better next time. What? But it brings me back to the point. You and I are not their priority. We don't matter to them. And frankly, in my view, the country doesn't matter to them in the sense that they want the country to be a strong constitutional republic. The country only matters to them as the haven for their power. Say, well, by not telling people, was he in some way acting in his own interest, contrary to the interests of the United States of America? Yes, because basically he was behaving selfishly. I think what it was about was he didn't want people to know what he was going through medically. And so instead of thinking about the interests of the country, he just thought about himself and did it. I think that's probably as deep as that goes. I don't think there was any other, just selfishness and concern about himself. And his own interests, his own wants, his own desires, not well, what's best for the country in this situation? You know, there's a line in America the Beautiful that comes back to me at moments like this. It comes back to me, it's been coming back to me a lot lately. And I think it goes, oh, beautiful. Well, the key part is, for those who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. We don't have many of those today who more than self their country love, and mercy more than life. That's what we're dealing with right now. And again, that's why I ran for president. Not because I believe I'm some superior human being. I don't. I'm just, a heaven-bound saint. I love the Lord. I love our country. I love our people. We love what this country represents. I love what the potential it has, staying true to America's national destiny. I really love the potential and the destiny that this nation could have as the ultimate beacon light of hope to the world. But I don't see myself as some superior human being. But I'll tell you what I am superior at. more than any other candidate, including the now field we've got now, in understanding that America's main problem is spiritual. It is not economic. It is not military. It is not financial. Now, not that those things don't present problems. They do. All I'm saying is, but the core of our issues is spiritual. And that core being poisoned is feeding into everything else. It's feeding into our economy. It's feeding into our military. It's feeding into our financial well-being. It's feeding into our educational system. It's feeding into our criminal justice system and law enforcement. It is poisoning everything. And there's not a candidate in the race who understands that. And we've got to have someone lead the country who does, ultimately. Now, right now, based on what we've got, I mean, look, I haven't officially endorsed anyone, but of the people who are in the race right now, it is crystal clear to me that the best shot we have is Donald Trump. I mean, the best shot we have of at least 4 years in which we can hold back the wolves. He's the best shot we've got. He's not an answer because, again, if you don't understand the spiritual nature of what we're going through, then you really don't have a strategy for addressing that. And without that, whatever you do, it can be very easily undone. And by the way, while you're doing whatever you do, the institutions that have been poisoned with this kind of spiritual perversion that is this cultural revolution that the country is undergoing right now, they're going to continue to march ahead. They're not going to stop. In fact, they might even accelerate because of the things that they are saying about Donald Trump. So that brings me to the second thing. I listened to the entire speech of Joe Biden that he gave, I guess, what was it, the end of last week. It was nauseating to have to listen to it. It really was. And I've got a very strong stomach, a very strong constitution, but it really made me feel queasy. I felt like the very thing he's accusing Donald Trump of, I felt like he himself was doing, and it felt to me like it might have felt to a person knowing that Adolf Hitler was bad, and I'm not comparing Joe Biden to Adolf Hitler, so please understand that. But I'm just saying, to me, it probably felt like a person who was opposed to Adolf Hitler in the early stages and just feeling queasy listening to him. Just feeling like, man, it makes me very uncomfortable to listen to this. Well, Joe Biden engaged in, again, just, in my view, one of the most demagogic speeches I've ever heard given in the United States of America. It was pure demagoguery and dangerous and disgusting. And I wanted to go through a little bit of it with you to tell you why man, whoever's pulling his strings, I mean, they've got him. I don't know whether it's Barack and Michelle Obama or George Soros or a combination of this wicked cabal of godless folks who hate America and hate everything we stand for, but they've really got control of Joe Biden. Because I don't believe that I don't even believe he's smart enough to be that demagogic. I think somebody else has got to show him that. Because I mean, we know the man's got a history of plagiarism. He can't write his own speeches. Somebody's putting these words into his mouth. I'm not saying he disagrees with them. I'm not saying that he is reading them thinking, I don't like any of that. I think at this point, he's basically just an empty vessel, and they pour into it. Because I think, again, the only thing that Joe Biden is really interested in is Joe Biden and money, and maybe the Biden family. I think that's all he's really interested in. But this speech was pure demagoguery. And it began by him saying that January 6th was a day. Now just listen to this, because you probably didn't listen to the speech. But I want you to hear this and hear this well, because this is what he said. January 6th was a day we nearly lost America. We nearly lost it all. That's how the speech begins. Now, folks, whether you agree or disagree with what happened on January 6th, and by the way, there's a lot of it I don't agree with, okay? So I'm not justifying lawlessness ever. But whether you characterize it as something, maybe a protest going wrong, or you characterize it as, just rank lawlessness, and is there anybody in America who believes that what happened on January 6th almost cost us our country, that we almost lost America? I mean, it's preposterous on its face. But that's how he begins. So he now, look, they want January 6th. In fact, in the speech toward the very end, he bookends the Declaration of Independence with January 6th. Independence to insurrection. He's putting this January 6th on the level of the Declaration of Independence, in terms of the Declaration of Independence being a great thing and the insurrection almost destroying the Declaration of Independence. I mean, that's how he starts. Well, folks, he later on, toward the end of his speech, when he's trying to sort of rile the crowd up, he says, "We don't foster fear." Really? Telling people that we almost lost the country on January 6th is not fostering fear? Because if that's all it took, a few hundred or a few thousand people or whatever it was who got into the Capitol building, and that could be the end of our country, if that's all it took, man, we're not very stable. We're teetering on the edge anyway. But he said, we don't foster fear. Well, that's the whole thing, was nothing about fear. Fear of Donald Trump, fear of MAGA Republicans. And by the way, what is a MAGA Republican? A MAGA Republican is are people who voted for Donald Trump. That's who he's talking about. And so I guess that makes me a MAGA Republican. Because he's not talking about people. Look, I don't have any doubt there are some people out there who, if Donald Trump said, I want you all to go up on the top of the Empire State Building and jump off, there probably are a few people who say, well, if Donald Trump said it, I'm going to do it. I would think those are a very small number of people. But there probably are some people who are really kind of involved in a cult of personality over him. I'm not one of them. And I don't think most people are. Most people who support Donald Trump and voted for Donald Trump because they believed in what they thought would be his policies for our country. And by the way, not because they agree with everything word that comes out of his mouth, or some things that come out of his mouth, you just shake your head and go, oh, brother, what is wrong with him? Not because they agree with every policy, because I don't agree with his views on homosexuality. I believe it's sin. It's wrong. He does not. I am strictly and absolutely pro-life. I believe that every one of those babies is a human being who deserves to live. Donald Trump apparently does not, at least doesn't have the level of conviction I have about that. So I don't think most Americans just think, yeah, well, Donald Trump, right or wrong, no matter what he says, it's all good. No. I think a lot of Americans say, well, look, he's the best we've got right now. And there are some great things about him. There's some things about him I wish were different. But there are some great things about him. As I said, I really believe that if he gets elected, he will hold back the wolves. I don't believe he'll change the trajectory of the country, because I think it's going to take a spiritual awakening to do that. And it's going to take a president who at least understands that in order to help affect that, or in order to sort of get in that flow. I don't believe Donald Trump will do that. But I know Nikki Haley won't do that, and I know Vivek Ramaswamy won't do that, and I don't. Ron DeSantis maybe is the second best choice. He just doesn't seem to be able to capture the hearts of the American people the way Donald Trump has, or at least of the conservatives the way Donald Trump has. But Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy, as far as I'm concerned, don't even belong in the same room. In fact, I think Nikki Haley just canceled an event in New Hampshire because they were taking pictures of an event that she was supposed to have, and the room was empty. And by the way, New Hampshire is not really conservative. New Hampshire is more libertarian, which means, and I guess they've seen through Nikki Haley, because I don't know what I don't know what Nikki Haley is. I really don't. I don't know what Vivek Ramaswamy is either, other than a Hindu. I don't know what he is. I don't trust these people as conservatives. I just don't. And they've got things in their backgrounds to raise those questions. But here again, I'm not here to talk about the presidential campaign. I really want to talk about this speech by Joe Biden, because to me, it is the ultimate example of political demagoguery that presents a threat to our country. Here's the second thing I want to point out. He must have used the word democracy 100 times. We're not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic, and he doesn't seem to get that. But I think there's intentionality in what they're saying, because they don't want a constitutional republic. They don't want a government of specific and enumerated powers. They don't want to limit the power of the government. They want to be able to say, well, the majority agrees, we can do whatever we want to do. That's where they are. That's what they want. That's what they mean when they say democracy. They never use the word republic, even though the father of our Constitution, James Madison, said, we don't want to be a democracy. We want to be a republic. But they still don't. They will never acknowledge that. Well, what would he know anyway? He's just a racist, slave-owning white man, right? So, I mean, what does he know? But that's part of the demagoguery, you see. They're a threat to our democracy. Well, we're not a democracy, dum-dum. We're a constitutional republic. But they want a government which they can do whatever they want to do. That's what they want. He says, quote, political violence has no place in our democracy. Well, I never heard him condemn all the riots that took place in 2020. Did you? No. Case closed. He said, we'll defend the truth, not give in to the big lie. Well, there's the big lie that opened the speech. We almost lost our country on January 6th. All of it. We almost lost it all. I mean, talk about it. But we defend the truth, and we don't give in to the big lie. Well, you're the big liar in chief. Look at this. The alternative to democracy is dictatorship. I mean, no, the alternative to democracy is a constitutional republic in our perspective, which is what we are. How about that alternative? But here again, they think adherence to the Constitution, the people who are constitutionalists and want to adhere to the Constitution, they say, we're extremists. We're dangerous. I guess the Constitution is a dangerous document because it gets in the way of, quote unquote, their democracy. And then he talks about freedom. He says, freedom to speak your mind, to be who you are, be who you want to be, unless you're a Christian. Unless you're a Christian. Because he says the people, leaders around the world have grabbed his arm and said, oh, if Donald Trump gets elected, are we going to be okay? Are you kidding me? Our allies were thrilled that they had somebody who was willing to stand up for them. And our enemies were shaking in their boots that they had somebody who was willing to stand up against them. He mentions claims that and by the way, he mentions dictators around the world limiting free speech and limiting freedom of religion. But you know what he never mentions? He never mentions the attacks on Christianity by these communist dictators like Xi Jinping, like Kim Il-sung, like like Maduro down in Venezuela, like what's happening in Nigeria right now. We're refusing, the United States government under Joe Biden is refusing to declare Nigeria a country of particular concern, which is a designation that says you are engaged in religious persecution, even though the Muslim organizations in Nigeria are murdering, raping, and enslaving Christians literally by the thousands, and it's happening every single day. He's too busy trying to promote the homosexual agenda. He's too busy trying to get countries to buy into so-called same-sex marriage, because there's really no such thing. It doesn't exist. That's just a concoction in the wicked imagination of some human beings who think that they can reorder God's creation, but it doesn't really exist. It's an oxymoron. He claims we're book banning. And everybody knows that all Christians have said is, we don't want these explicit, pornographic, homosexual, sexualizing books to be available to our young children, because it is inappropriate for them. Nobody said the books can't be sold. Nobody said the books can't be bought. Nobody said the books can't even be in the library. Nobody has said that. But it was book banning. He said, we don't buy into the big lie. Well, there's another big lie. I've never called for a book to be banned in my life. And I don't think any conservative ever has. But my goodness gracious, we've got to protect the innocence of our children. He claims what Trump wants in our country is all-out war. Really? This speech would suggest to me that that's what Biden is trying to do. Create all-out war in the country. Us against them. The MAGA Republicans are a threat to our democracy. Well, how do you deal with them? I don't know. Maybe you got to kill them. I don't know. If they're a threat to our democracy. And he says about Barack Obama, you can't love your country only when you win. Remember what Michelle Obama said after Barack Obama got elected? For the first time in my adult life, I'm proud of my country. For the first time in my adult life, I'm proud of my country. What do you think she would have said if he had lost? My guess is she probably had never said she was proud of her country. And he's got the nerve to lecture us and tell us you can't love your country only when you win. Well, we don't love our country only when we win. We've just lost by hook and by crook a presidential election in 2020, and my love for my country didn't diminish not one iota. And I doubt that Donald Trump's did either. Then he says, no one, not even a president, is above the law. Really? Well, you and your son seem to be. And you and your family seem to be. I mean, Donald Trump is being prosecuted for holding on to classified documents, which as a former president, the president of the United States has the ultimate classification authority. Joe Biden had classified documents, and he was not president when those documents were stored in his garage. I didn't see anybody prosecuting him. And he's got the nerve to lecture us. No president, not even a president is above the law. Well, he seems to be. Donald Trump is facing 4 indictments. And he says, we still believe in we the people, not some of us, all of us. But the whole premise of the speech is half the country is crazy, half the country is against our democracy. And yet he said, but we still believe in all of us. And then he says this, we're not weighed down by grievances. We're not weighed down by grievances. Really? Really? When you got your teachers union teaching people that you're either oppressed or oppressor, and here's the long list of oppressed people, and here's who is oppressing you. White men, Christians, Need I go on? We're not weighed down by grievances. The Democrat Party is nothing but a party of grievances. That's all they are. They says we don't walk around as victims. What? Are you kidding me? They're creating new victim classes every day. We thought we'd seen them all. But oh, no. They can always come up with more. So now we've got gender confused people are a victim class. I guess you could include non-binary. Gender confused people includes those they call transgender, which I won't use anymore because you can't transition from one gender to another. Those people who call themselves non-binary, which means they're no gender. We now find out that Muslims, some of whom are killing Christians and killing people around the world in terrible acts, horrifying acts of terror, but they're apparently victims. Women are victims, no matter what the color of their skin. And by the way, you get to be a double or triple victim if you're black, you're a woman, and you're a lesbian. Oh man, that's the trifecta. You've hit the lottery. You know, you've got it all going on. I mean, we don't walk around as victims. That's all the Democrat Party does is promote victimhood. And again, equating what happened on January 6th as equivalent importance to the Declaration of Independence and the Revolutionary War that birthed this country. It's staggering, but it is pure demagoguery. And it's sad that our country had ended up with a person like that as president of the United States. He's an empty vessel. I don't know who's giving him the words to speak. My feeling is probably Barack Obama, the wordsmith, is probably the one giving him the words because, of course, Barack Obama, as we know, he's the messiah for victimhood, right? Yeah, I think they're still looking to him for leadership and guidance, and who knows? If people think that Michelle's going to be injected in there as the ultimate presidential candidate, I don't believe that, but I wouldn't rule it out. You know, they say she's going around making speeches about foreign policy and all that, so who knows? Who knows? I mean, that would be the second president. At least Biden makes patriotic noises. Barack Obama didn't even do that. I mean, he made no pretense to loving this country, ever. Neither he nor his wife, ever. I mean, it was clear. They resent America. But they like to run it, which brings me back to my point, which I started with Lloyd Austin. These people don't care about us. They care about themselves, their own elitism, their own power, their money, their privilege. They talk about white privilege. I mean, please. No, you know what there is in this country? Ideological privilege. If you're on the left, you get a whole lot of breaks that you don't get if you're conservative. You just don't. You don't get them if you're conservative, period. If you can be identified in many circles, it's like Obama just won an Emmy Award for some nonsense he did with Netflix. And he and his wife just produced this stupid, I guess some kind of cartoon about a homosexual wedding for preschoolers. He'll probably get an award for that next time. I mean, my book, Sweet Land of Liberty, Reflections of a Patriot Descended from Slaves. In fact, I'll be on CBN in February to talk about my book. I really believe that if that book had been a leftist diatribe, it would have been a bestseller. I mean, I mean a runaway bestseller. But you know what happened, don't you? I mean, they censored it. I mean, they don't want people reading a book that extols the virtues of America. They don't want people reading a book by a black man who loves America and explains slavery in its proper context in world history. And my view on it, the way I look at it, no. If this was a book about how we've got to have reparations because I'm oppressed and I'm a victim, and if it weren't for slavery, I fill in the stupid blanks. But if I wrote a book like, oh man, they say, oh, this is just one of the most brilliant books. Oh my goodness, every person ought to read it. In fact, I just had a friend of mine, a pastor of a large church, just ordered several boxes of my books for his church members. I really believe every American ought to read my book because it really puts to rest all this racial nonsense about slavery and black people are oppressed and America's a white supremacist country. That's a load of horse manure. That's garbage. Period. It's garbage. And reparations, I haven't used this lately, but I renamed reparations rip-off rations. I had to remember, right? Rip-off rations, because that's all that is. Asking people who never owned slavery, whose ancestors may have even come here after slavery was over, to pay money to people who never were slaves, many of whom probably their ancestors came, because a lot of people came from the West Indies and so forth, and were never slaves, certainly not in America. And we had a lot of African immigrants coming to the country who were never slaves. Their folks probably sold some of the people into slavery whose ancestors, whose progenitors are here now. But asking them to be, it's ridiculous. It's absurd. But if I wrote a book espousing all that, man, New York Times, the New York Times would have been writing rave reviews. What an enlightened black man. No. Forgive me. What an enlightened African American. Folks, that's what we're up against. That's why I'm going to keep doing this program. I'm going to keep speaking out. I'm going to keep trying to build an audience and build a following and build support, not for me, but for our country. By the way, and I'm going to go when I announce this, I'm going to start a new project called REACH. And REACH stands for Revolt to End Anti-Christian Hatred. American Revolt. American Reach, I should say. American Reach. Revolt to end anti-Christian hatred. Because that's what we're facing in our country today. I got to go. I've gone way over. I've even gone over the time I've gone over. So, listen, you stand up, step up, speak up, refuse to back up, because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit. Because we are on God's side.